What is up, down, and sideways, all you beautiful individuals? It is another episode of League Online. My name is Eric, and I'm solo on today's episode as we got a special little treat, at least for me. I don't know if you're all the same, but whenever a new big teaser trailer video drops, whether it's domestically for LTA, LEC, or even more so for the big international events, I'm a sucker for breaking them down, analyzing, getting me hyped up, the music, the cinematography, the storylines that are followed. So today we're looking at 10 of the best teaser videos of all time. There's a lot to pull from. I feel like we've now easily reached triple digits, even when you're looking at some of these international events. You know, they used to churn them out like multiple throughout an event. It seems like they're backing off a little bit, but they definitely have increased the budget as of late for a lot of these. So we're starting in, there's some unique ones also that don't follow the typical formula, and that is exactly where we're starting on this list, because we are going to 2020 LCS Summer Split opening teaser. And if you will recall, 2020 Summer, you were peak COVID, so they weren't really filming any of the players, so you had this full animation that I thought they actually did a great job capturing what the essence of the LCS was supposed to be, and that there's a reason we call it the for fun region. But having a nice little cutesy bright animation like this that had tons of different references to past players, champions, iterations. You know, you had the Meteos swag move, you had Dignitas throwing at Baron, all the different logos and characters that have been throughout the history of the LCS. Thought this was a really fun way to hype people up for this event, especially it's a prime example of forced limited creativity, where you couldn't have the players in studio, you couldn't have the typical formula of players crossing their arms, pointing, fixing the glasses type poses that they used to do. And there's been you could do an entire list that are cringe, the worst teasers that we've done, and maybe I'll write that down and do that later. But this one was unique, it was different, it was a breath of fresh air, and it at least got me excited for the LCS and excited for what the brand was. Obviously lost sight of that a little bit over the last couple of years, but this was a rare example of Riot doing it right. Number 9 one to look at is it's also a little bit different. It wasn't finals, wasn't playoffs, it wasn't a split. It was the LPL especially used to do kind of teaser videos for Worlds that highlighted the teams that were representing that region. And the best example, the most hyped one in my opinion, was 2019, mainly because the 3 teams that were representing, it was only 3 teams back in 2019. They were hyped. The storylines were built up to it. You had IG as the defending champions, so you had them wearing these majestic white capes as they ascended the stairs to immortality. You had Fun plus Phoenix, who were the current LPL champions, and obviously a Phoenix is easy to do cool graphics with. You just put stuff on fire, rising from the ashes. And then the RNG side, really all you had to do was have Uzi look off in the distance, because of course a legend of the game in his own right. But having these 3 specific teams really felt like they delivered the hype. We know the LPL and LCK, to sometimes a lesser degree, go way over the top with a lot of these teaser videos. As of late, it feels like it's been a little more removed, because it's heavy on the animation. You're even putting the players in that kind of CGI setting, because game engines and animation engines are so absolutely insanely good these days. It's not a cop-out, but it's an easier way to do something, it feels like. So having the actual players involved, again, back in 2019, we're over a half decade ago, so that's how quickly things are moving on. But that was a really hype one, and obviously it ended up living up to the hype, because the LPL would dominate the majority of that World Championship in 2019, with FPX eventually winning that title. Of course, had that showdown against IG in semis. So all 2 out of 3, RNG not delivering at that event, but the other 2 squads absolutely did. Number 8 was all about the storylines, and kind of the opposite of the other LCS one that I highlighted. We're going 2019 Spring Final, the bosses. This is, of course, TSM versus Team Liquid, Double Lift versus Bjergsen. They went all in on that storyline. They got them wearing cool jackets to show up to the shoot for this one, and of course, this is kind of the first time they've matched up against each other in the finals, the two biggest, most iconic faces of the LCS since they departed from being on teams. 2018 was a forgettable one for TSM. 2019, you saw them return to that final stage, and no better matchup than Yerksen versus Doublelift. The far and away biggest individual fan bases that the LCS has probably ever had. Still, I don't think anyone has reached that amount. So easy teaser, easy storyline for Riot and the boys to follow, but you also had, of course, Jensen versus Bjergsen was that rivalry. Sven versus Doublelift was a rivalry in its own right, and even had little baby Broken Blade as a rookie in this one. You forget that he did actually have some good times on TSM, where he was one of the more exciting players in the LCS, but obviously this is when viewership was still going to be amazing for the LCS. I've said LCS about 100 times. I know it's the LTA, but these are from the LCS era, and it just feels better to say LCS than LTA. So get used to that one. But obviously, there's no better viewership or matchup that Riot and the league could have hoped for than this one, and they smashed it out of the park. It's not like they did anything crazy with going to a new location or anything, but really the storyline sold itself. And that's kind of the theme with a lot of these teaser videos, is the drama is already there. It's just trying to capture it and adding to that hype, but that main storyline is absolutely there. You could probably do an entire list like this just for LCK or OGN when they were still doing these. Really, these were the original hype up videos for a new split starting or a finals. OGN were the ones doing it, and basically everybody else copied onto that. But the best individual one for me to highlight has got to be the 2017 spring split in the LCK, and there was so many great threads to follow heading into this split. Obviously, SKT coming back as defending world champions, and the Rocks Tigers, the roster imploding, and they did such a good job capturing that, showing all 5 guys on different squads. Prey and Gorilla go to Longshu. Smeb comes with this KT roster super team that also sees Deft and Mata return to the LPL or the LCK after being in the LPL for a couple of splits, and then of course it ends with Marin's return on Afrika. He gets the showdown with Faker. Faker's looking back at the rest of the competition. So absolute masterclass out of OGN on how to hype up for a split and kind of recap the offseason. You go, oh my god, this guy's on this team now, this guy's on this team. It happened. We always talk about crazy free agencies and off-seasons the last several years, but they used to be even more insane when you had a exodus and then a re-exodus of these LCK players swapping teams or returning from different regions. So there's definitely a precedent and a history of this happening all the time. But yeah, definitely seeing how perfectly edited the Rocks Tigers, kind of like a dandelion seed going to the wind, being spread across the rest of the LCK. Absolute perfection of what we were getting in the LCK. Number 6 on this list, we're getting a little bit more recent, and like that LCS one we kicked things off with, it was a little different. We know the LEC has done things very differently. There's a few of these kind of music videos that Dracos and Vidius have done that you could highlight, but one of the more recent ones that actually was for a hype up or teaser video for the split is 2025 Winter. This was the Give Me Chaos video that you had the players all in the LEC, more so than any other league, are happy to play along with the goofiness, with the craziness, and the LEC kind of took from the LCS that for fun, like, we're not trying to be too serious, we're trying to have a little bit of fun with these teaser videos, and this is one of the best ones in my opinion. You had Broken Blade and the Brav looking around for the GOAT, which is supposed to be Caps missing, the Mad Lions Koi, kind of Jojo Pyun comes in as the ringleader for this circus, and it really highlighted the Blue Revolution, which ended up being a pretty good prediction, premonition, if you will, from the LEC, as K-Corp would win that first split and represent first stand for the LEC. Kalist kind of coming in as this monster that's been built to take over the league, and again, not far off, but I think the combination of obviously the musical talent that you're getting out of Dracos and Vidius to perform this, and then again, the players just buying in, committing, not being worried about looking ridiculous, and just kind of giving it. You can't go halfway there for videos like this. You have to go all in and not be afraid to look a little bit absurd. And if you do that, then the absurdness, I mean, it comes across as actually looking pretty awesome. And that was the case, of course. The editing, the sound design, the audio design, for the music that goes into this. Like, this is a full project. This is so much more than some of the lazy sit the guys in the studio and do some cool lens flares across and play some old clips of highlights. This is going above and beyond. So just want to recognize, shout out what the LEC was doing in 2025 winter. We can also hype up, I think 2017 is when we saw there really become an emphasis on the cinematography, the music, the effort that was put into these teaser videos. First and foremost, throughout really all of the World Championship, but especially, of course, the World Finals, where Worlds becomes synonymous with the autumnal scene of all the leaves changing, the oranges, the reds, the browns, and Samsung Galaxy and SKT walking through. Even in semifinals before this, I think Bang drops the killer line that's like, SKT will be inevitable and always be the best team in League of Legends, which, spoilers, 7, 8, 9 years later, still holds true. And there's been a whole other dynasty since that Bang Wolf era. But the finals themselves, absolutely love that Coma was so featured. He became so synonymous with SKT, with Faker, and deserved to be in more of these teaser videos, honestly. But you have this scene where it pans out and it's like the Last Supper with Faker sitting in the middle. Like, this is some pure direction, like artistic directing going into these teaser videos. So absolutely love this one and really set the stage for, this is looking for a three-peat SKT. Samsung, the true David versus Goliath, even though Samsung had some big upsets to even get to these World Finals. Of course, they were massive underdogs, even with a struggling SKT throughout the event. The plot armor was so resilient at this point, this era, this iteration of SKT, that you were fully expecting them to somehow find a way to win yet again in those World Finals. Of course, it's Samsung coming away with it as that big underdog status. But this really felt like a pivot to taking things more seriously for some of these teaser videos, putting more effort into them. Another prime example of that goes to 2019, and this is again kind of the storylines writing themselves. Like, it's hard not to make a banger teaser when you had IG versus FPX, the two LPL squads, civil war vying for that spot in finals, and then the rematch from MSI previously in the year, G2 versus SKT. Caps stepping out of that baby Faker shadow and just evolving into Claps, and obviously in the end getting the better of SKT twice, 2 international events, which is even to this day basically unheard of. And the fact that it was a European team doing it, absolutely insane. But the shot of Faker looking down at Caps kind of as the challenger, trying to take that throne from him, absolutely beautifully done. And this was on European soil, and this wasn't like we're expecting a 3-0 out of SKT, haha, funny that a Western team got here. G2 were legit. This was the golden year for G2 that was actually, closer than any other team has gotten since SKT 2015, one series away from completing that golden road, were G2. So they were a legit world-class team, comparable to the LCK, comparable, maybe not to the LPL, with how the finals ended up going, but storylines just so perfectly written for this one. And again, we're taking the teasers a little bit more seriously. The finals after this is, of course, another one you can talk about, because they go in Paris to this absolutely stunning old home or old museum with all the history and architecture that is synonymous with these older countries in Europe. And it was pretty cool as well. But 2019 kind of had multiple threads of storylines to talk about, and that's the reason that one gets the nod a little bit more ahead. We enter the really modern ones, and this is, 2017, it felt like a pivot. They started taking things seriously. You can go maybe 2022, after the COVID era, where it obviously took away from a lot of the capabilities that they were able to do. Once they were full steam ahead, you saw the audio design level up, sound effects. They had like custom musical tracks that they were making for these teasers, and I feel like when drones started coming around to really be able to get some interesting shots at a lot of these things, there was a full other level up in 2022. But we go to 2023, where you have the revenge for that 2017 World Championship, where Samsung takes down SKT, T1, JDG. That semifinals, the teaser for that one was absolutely deadly. I talk about the music. They have so much of this library to pull from that they can kind of, revamp and remix. Legends Never Die are the one that they use in this one to an absolute masterclass. And of course, then we start getting the one-liners. Guma saying, I'm not just going to beat Ruler, I'm going to break him, destroy him, whatever paraphrase there. And then this is the one that has, JDG, they're going for the Golden Road. They're 2 series away for completing their Golden Road journey. And of course, Faker has the line, Ruler, you forget, all roads lead to me, which we have seen a spin-off in basically any T1 teaser video since this one. There's some play on that line about the roads leading to him, but this was the OG. It doesn't even matter if someone at Riot is writing this line for Faker to use them. I know that they have some writers giving them some of these lines, but Faker, of course, ice cold in the delivery, and that series in itself delivers. We know SKT gets T1, wins that series, gets to the finals, wins again, and kind of restarts this dynasty of T1 at the World Championship. But the combination of Guma and Kiria wanting revenge for Faker that Ruler sent to him 6 years prior to this one at the World Championship, and of course, Ruler looking to complete that Golden Road. Knight wants to be the first non-Korean mid laner. There were so many things happening heading into this matchup that was a dream matchup for fans and Riot themselves, because they got to absolutely deliver a world-class teaser like this one. It wasn't even quite as good as the semifinal one the following year, and you'll notice a theme. Most of these best teasers, they represent, or they have T1 or SKT in some capacity. A lot of that is because basically every World Championship has T1 in the semis or finals. Some of these big, biggest budget teasers that Riot has for the year, and they usually have the most compelling storylines to talk about. Riot's really in trouble when Faker retires, because so many of their best storylines come from that guy, and it's they're gonna have to find other things to talk about and other things to tease. But we're going to 2024 World Semifinals, Gen G versus T1. Again, there's some absolutely deadly lines that are delivered here. This is another one that was in France, so you had the architecture, the statues of all the players walking around, and of course, the setup for this is Gen G has dominated T1 domestically, but international T1 hits different. And if Gen G truly wants to be that new generation, Chovy wants to be the guy in the mid lane in the LCK, Faker has the ice cold line. If you're the future, prove it with, of course, edited perfectly. And again, I think this one has Awaken, the song that again, it's remixed. They have like sound design, big drones and pull-ins that are in sync with the song. It really feels like a legitimate movie trailer, does this specific one. And Chovy and the boys, of course, ultimately fall short against SKT, but Guma is a guy who needs to be fed more lines. And more often than not, how many times did you see Owner or Zeus being the voice, the vocal that's being used in a lot of these things? No. It's Faker delivering the lines that most likely are written for him, or Guma talking some smack, talking trash, which we know he absolutely excels at. But this remains one of the best teasers of all time, and probably will for a very long time, only to be beaten or usurped. And I even hesitate. I feel like this one you could easily put as number one ahead of the 2022 World Finals. Of course, this one is legit movie. DRX versus T1, and of course, this is the absolutely insane, bonkers, miracle last dance run out of DRX. They go through EDG. It fully felt like a Pokemon episode, because Deft is going through his former teammates' all the way through Scout and Mako, then Chovy, and then Kyria, who used to be his bot lane buddy, and of course Faker, the guy who we went to high school with in the same class. Like, even at the time, the guys being from the same high school and then matching up in this World Finals was absolutely absurd. And this is, this is also T1 returning to that World Final stage for the first time since 2017. They had lost in semifinals a couple of times, but never been back to that big dance in, the better part of a decade. So it was, again, DRX going to be underdogs in this matchup, but the Deft and Faker connection and really all this run, like the quarterfinals and semifinals, all had such amazing teasers because DRX just kept winning these matchups that they, on paper, had absolutely no business winning, but it truly felt like there was some ethereal magic surrounding this squad, surrounding Deft particularly, and I feel like he was cursed afterwards because he didn't actually retire. We had like 2 more years of Deft playing, so this was actually the penultimate preliminary last dance because there were many dances to come, but he got the world championship and kept Faker and the boys motivated to eventually come back and win 2 finals after losing this one in heartbreaking fashion. We know how the series went. Absolutely insane 5-game set. Guma stealing Barons on the Varus. Incredibly back and forth. Contested game 5. Ends in a pseudo base race out of desperation for SKT. Lived up to the hype, but I think this, and I've talked to a few people who were at this event live, this was the teaser that probably hyped people up the most because you were rooting for both teams. Nobody wanted to see Deft lose, but people love Faker, so they wanted to see him win. So it was maybe the most heartbreaking finals because you were guaranteed disappointment on one end when you want both teams, both stars of their respective teams to win so badly. You're going to be due for disappointment, but also a little bit of euphoria because one of them is guaranteed to win. And this, more than any of the others on this list, did feel like a movie trailer. So kudos to Riot and the team that was involved in making this one. And maybe in the future we'll look at the most cringe teaser videos of all time. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you gorgeous individuals for hanging out, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.